Hello everyone, this is Anne again, recording from beautiful sunny Ashburton in Devon. Today's video is one that I'm making for couples and families who are now in Corona lockdown, and I'm going to be focusing on conflicts that may always have existed within the relationships but which could really rise during lockdown. So, I'm standing here in my upgraded studio, all I mean by that is I've actually ironed the sheet that's covering my kitchen cabinets, and I've got a few extra props today. I am going to be delivering most of this video using my outrageous Bawdy-Crone style to get the message across. But before I do that, I want to start with an extremely serious message. So, the police here in Devon are already anticipating a spike in domestic violence. And unfortunately, our police, who were already too few in number, are very, very busy with other issues. So what we need to do is look after ourselves, and we need to look after anyone we know who might be at risk of domestic violence. So you'll see up here I've posted the telephone number for the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. Please keep that handy. You may not need it yourself, but someone you know may need you to phone them. What I recommend is that you agree a code word or phrase with anyone who may be at risk, something that they can say which wouldn't alert their partner. If we're thinking about a woman being abused by a man, I've found in the past that the best words that the woman can use are things like thrush, vaginal discharge, or sanitary towels. Yes, the toughest men seem to walk away when those words are mentioned. So please keep yourselves safe and make sure you keep anyone that you know safe. Now, in today's video, I am going to be focusing on a heterosexual relationship where a man may become violent or abusive towards a woman, but I do completely appreciate that domestic abuse can occur between same-sex couples and also between parents or step-parents and their children. And indeed, we mustn't forget that children, particularly those teenagers, young adults with special needs, can become violent under pressure to their parents. So please keep everybody safe. So I'm not just any aging woman in Devon delivering this message. My professional experience was as a psychotherapist and as a family therapist, and it's that experience that I'll be drawing on today, and I'm going to use my own, not other people's personal experiences to try and communicate this message. So first of all, let's think about why conflicts arise in relationships. So we don't choose to go into bad relationships. What tends to happen is that we find our partner desirable. We're pulled together by sexual attraction. We all tend to exaggerate the best bits of ourselves and our partners and minimise any negative aspects early in a relationship. We then have a good few months or years when we're bonding and all the feel-good chemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, make us fall and for a while at least stay in love. But unfortunately, the things we weren't conscious of at the beginning tend to come out in the relationship and conflicts can develop. So, the negative traits in ourselves and in our partners come to the fore. And unfortunately, what can happen is we start to get irritated with our partners. That irritation can turn to anger, and if it's expressed in an unhealthy way, it can become aggression. So basically what I'm saying is this can happen to anyone. I'll just give you an example. Let's say a woman who thinks of herself as ugly and weak is looking for a partner. She may choose somebody she thinks will fill in her gaps, so she may be drawn to a man who feels strong and charming, but she's ignoring the negative side of him. What also tends to happen is that couples tend to be naturally conflict avoidant. So we tend to do the things that keep things quiet, we hope that things will get better, and we don't learn the skills of talking to one another without blaming the other. And these are some of the things that I'm going to cover in today's video. So, it's now Corona lockdown, and many of you may have heard the phrase, it could turn into a pressure cooker. Now, the young uns amongst you might never have seen a pressure cooker, so that's my first prop. This is a pressure cooker. So, this bit is like a saucepan, you can see that, and what you need to imagine is that this is your home. Now it's the lid on a pressure cooker that's special. It's got a very tight seal on it and a weight to hold it down. So imagine all the pressures and fears about Corona are the weight, and the legal lockdown is what's holding the lid on tight. Now, any conflicts that are pre-existing in a relationship under circumstances like this are going to be heated up like the pressure cooker. Things are going to cook really quickly, and if you leave a pressure cooker on the heat for too long, it can literally explode. And this is what I'm worried about, that couples all over the country, all over the world, may get to explosion point. And if there's any small thing that I can do by giving out this information to prevent that happening, that's what I'd like to do. So, first of all, I'm just going to share a personal story. I'm very fortunate. I've never been the victim of domestic violence myself, but I'm telling you, if my ex-husband was here now, there's a possibility he could be. So, yeah, a few years ago, well, actually many years ago, I got together with my ex-husband. It was at a time when I was looking for a new partner. He was a friend of mine. We got on well. I liked his sense of humour and didn't realise at the time that he'd got a very limited repertoire of jokes and they'd get tired very quickly. There was a sexual attraction between us, but there were things we didn't acknowledge about each other. One of my faults was that I could see that the best he could be. I could see that he could achieve more and be more than he had been in the past. And I encouraged him to do things that I thought would make him feel better about himself. But he experienced that as me being pushy. I started to see weak. He saw somebody who nagged. Our sex life stopped completely many years before we parted, because one day I had the experience that he was, when he was fucking me, shoving all the things he hated about himself into me, sort of trying to ejaculate that into me so that he would temporarily feel better about himself, and well, I just couldn't do that. So, the other problem is that he absolutely refused to talk about anything. He'd retreat into silence, and when somebody won't talk to you, it's actually impossible to try and resolve things and make things better. So, I must be one of the very few people in the world that was absolutely delighted to discover that he had a secret wife and 3 children in the Philippines. That gave me the perfect excuse to make him leave. But today I'm very mindful that if he was here, I would find the things about him that I didn't like them absolutely intolerable, with all the anxieties about coronavirus. Now let's just think about this. Every kitchen in the country is full of potential lethal weapons. The things about my ex-husband which really drove me mad were, number one, his exceptionally loud snoring. It literally made my timber-framed house vibrate. And also the fact that he'd started to drink 1 to 2 bottles of red wine a night, and he would invariably spill the wine on the carpet. Now, if he was still here now doing that, here's just a few of the things in a fit of rage I might have been tempted to use. A plastic bag to smother in. A rolling pin to bash his face in. Oh, or a drawer full of knives. Look, I've even got my handy knife sharpener, and the brand name is Judge. Yes, in a fit of rage, I might have judged him unworthy of living. And you know what? In coronavirus lockdown, I might even have got away with murdering him. Because clearly I'd be a vulnerable adult, mentally unhinged, and therefore I could call on my neighbour Betty. She'd be allowed to come and visit me as a vulnerable adult. And hey, we're being encouraged to take exercise every day, so our exercise could have been dragging his body into the boot of the car. And then we could have gone out on a trip for essential supplies, dumped the body in the doorway of a closed shop, perhaps the one near here, owned by a man, UKIP and anti-Brexit. You know, it might have felt like an appropriate place to dump it. And bodies are piling up in mortuaries. Post-mortems aren't being done. If the police had found him, slightly battered and reeking of alcohol, they may just have thought he was some poor homeless person who'd succumbed to coronavirus. We wouldn't even have been found out. So, I'm pleased he's not here, but if he was, then I would have had to have acted differently. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways we can all act differently. So, the next part of this video is about any of you who think you're with a monster, or even an imagined monster. Okay, so these are the things that you can do that will release the pressure in a situation of conflict. First of all, it's really important that the first person you look after is yourself. So I'm going to suggest that you find a way of withdrawing from conflict as much as you can. Now, in a small flat, the only place you might be able to go is to the loo. Now, even if you just put a picture on the back of the loo door of a place where you've always felt happy, you've felt at peace, and you can sit on the loo and focus on that. Just breathe as slowly and deeply as you can. And if you can, imagine breathing from your heart. Just breathe in love. There are always people out there that love us. If we can't feel the love of other people, just breathe in universal love. And keep breathing until you feel calm. And focus on that picture if you've got one, that special sacred place where you always feel better. There are other ways of withdrawing yourself as well. So, for example, you might have a to-do list, and in fact some of the to-do things might have been put on the list by your partner. So calmly go and perhaps do some of those jobs but much more importantly is trying to find things that you can do in your own space that are going to be meditative and calming to you. So for example, you may have been thinking for ages that you'd like to make some handcrafted gifts for your family or a friend. Why don't you lose yourself in that? And if your partner says, you should be doing this, just say, at the moment, this is what I need to be doing. It's helping to de-stress me, and I'm going to move on to those other things next. Okay, that's withdrawal. Now, the other thing to do in withdrawal is, first of all, start thinking about yourself. Acknowledge what you're feeling, even if they're difficult and painful feelings. Don't suppress the feelings. Maybe jot those feelings down in a journal. Also, think about yourself and any of the things that you do and ask yourself whether you could do anything differently. Anything that would make yourself feel better and that would calm the situation. Anything that will take the heat out of the pressure cooker. And maybe if you're honest about your feelings and the way you're taking care of yourself, your partner will feel more sympathetic towards you. It's much easier to feel sympathetic to somebody who's feeling terrified than somebody who's feeling angry. Also, ask yourself, am I blaming my partner for anything? Because if you are, what you need to do is think, am I unfairly blaming my partner? Is there anything that I could do so that there would be less blame in the situation? And just jot down in your journal or on a scrap of paper any insights that you get, because you'll be able to track your own progress if you keep looking back at the journal. It's such a simple thing to do. Right, I'm now going to teach you something that I learned on my psychotherapy training, which has been invaluable to me throughout my life since then. And it's a way of taking blame out of any situation. And the way you do this is to use a series of I statements. Okay? So, if my ex-husband was here, it would be very easy for me to say to him, "You fat, snoring bastard! You've spilled red wine again!" Now that's not helpful. It's just going to get a defensive or an aggressive response. So the formula that you can use is this. I notice. I feel. I wonder if. And I'm just going to translate my previous statement into that formula. So, you ready? I notice that you seem to be very stressed at the moment. I feel stressed too. I wonder if you would feel and sleep better if you were drinking a little bit less. How about a beer at night instead of the 2 bottles of red wine? I wonder if things would be much calmer and better between us if you did that. So it's all about me, it's not about him, and that can really, really help. Okay, now back to some insights that you may gain about yourself. So, I think about me. Okay, so I'd expected too much of my damaged husband. He'd had such an awful childhood. He wasn't really capable of being in an intimate relationship. I was also ill at the time, so I expected far too much of him. I needed my sleep, you know, I needed him to be more generous towards me, but the poor man just couldn't be. So if he was here right now, I could be using those I statements instead of blaming him. I could be taking myself off to do my own thing. I could let him carry on the internet for hours on end. That would have been healthy separation. And if I'd gone out for essential supplies, funnily enough, Tesco would have completely run out of red wine, but I'd have brought some beer back instead. Okay, the other things that you can do, even if things are awful and if you know darn well that if you both survive this, you're going to end up separating and end up in a different relationship or on your own, at least you can talk about the good times that you did have, and that might bring you close enough together to start other conversations. Okay, let's move on to those other conversations. So again, I'm going to share my own experience. So for me, this is painfully real. So until recently, I was in the most beautiful relationship, a very healing relationship, but with a married man. Now, he temporarily left me to resolve things with his legal wife and with his family. And he's now become trapped in the marital home with his legal wife, and I really feel for them because it's not going to be easy. They married when they were too young to learn the language of emotional communication, so they actually can't say anything real to each other, and they can't even see any longer a marriage guidance counsellor because, of course, counsellors are shutting down their business. So I know that it's going to be very fraught in that house, and at a distance I feel for that, and the love and passion I feel for that man I'm now having to channel into making videos like this, and I'm just hoping and praying that it can be resolved at some point in the future. So he can't be honest about his unhappiness over the past decades and the pathological coping strategies he had, and he's even denying the reality of how important I am to him and have been to him. And because of that, I can't even be a friend to him at this time, or offer support to his family, which I'd love to do. And he once came out with this phrase, which was that he could hear death's scythe being sharpened in anticipation. And if he could really hear it, he'd make different choices in his life. And I'm afraid, now that we're all being threatened by a killing virus, we've all got that sound of death's scythe in our ears. So we need to be making the right choices, and we need to be upping our game and honestly communicating with people. You know, none of us know if we've got much time left. We're not all going to survive. So let's do our best to be real, to be soulful, and to share loving kindness. You know, my partner could be thanking his wife for their early happy years together, be celebrating the wonderful family that they co-created, and they could be beginning to talk about a new and different relationship in the future where they're friends and get together for family gatherings if we all survive. And that's what I'm praying might happen. And that he'll be able to say when it's over, he just wants to move into a place of his own, a neutral space. So, I am actually going to be doing another video, and if I get the technology together, I'll be producing Wise Woman Devon, podcasts, and a website and a blog. And one of the first things that I'll be producing is something on coping with all the emotions that are arising during this corona lockdown. But I really want to end this video on a positive note. So, let's say you're not with a monster or an imagined monster, and you're lucky enough to be with a partner who's foxy as hell. Now, doesn't that throw a new light onto being in lockdown for weeks? Why don't you become your most powerful, sexy self and Just imagine the fun you can have together. Yeah! Spend as much time as you can in bed having wild sex. In fact, have wild sex all over the house. Treat each other. Explore new sensual pleasures. Make delectable edibles for one another and have lovely bed picnics. What about the children? I can hear some of you saying, well, you know, those conversations you thought you'd have one day about love and sex. Now's the time to have them. And in fact, if you've got teenage children who are sneaking out at night, you might want to mail order some condoms and just let them live for the now, but safely. Okay, that's it. Thank you very, very much for watching today. I hope something in this is useful to you and to others. Please don't forget the National Domestic Abuse Hotline number in case you or anyone you know needs it, with or without a catchword or phrase. So for now, stay safe, but stay sane as well. Thank you for watching and hope to see you again soon.